Video number 2 today. Hi, friends and extended family. I was reading through my comments on some of my videos, and inevitably, there's always the people that still live in the fog, that are still holding on to their own guilt and shame, and it's upsetting. Fair enough. Um, I'm going to give you an example of how these people react that I got to experience. When I was in AA, I was sitting there one day and I was discussing, basically the stupidity of the system itself, the ignorance of the average person, unfortunately, and what not to do with smoking. And basically, what I was saying was that, I was born into bondage with tobacco smoke. And not only that, I was allergic to it. So it got me sent to the hospital, for weeks at a time to have my back pounded on, which was called therapy, um, to get the crap out of my lungs. Um, and I would spend a lot of time there. In some ways it was good. My childhood memory of being held was by a nurse when I was about 3, and I used to skateboard around the hospital on my IV because my little arms were too short to hold it out, and I would run over my toes, so I had to skateboard on it. And I remember one of the nurses holding me, and something to do with, if I gave her a kiss, I would be a prince or she would be a princess, whatever it may be. But it's a fond memory, and something as simple as a child being held. So that being said, I had mentioned the tobacco, and this woman got very upset at me. She said, "We didn't know. Why would you say something like that and blame us and blah, 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 blah." That's all fine and dandy. You didn't know. But I wasn't talking about her in particular. I was talking about the system itself. When it sees a child struggling to breathe, which is not a pleasant experience on top of everything else that goes along with adoption. Like throwing your back out, trying to get oxygen. That's what I'm talking about. Anyway, she got very upset with me, the victim of fumigation by a highly addictive substance that's highly toxic. Now, yes, we are victims of our own governments using very addictive substances to keep us under control. Alcohol as well. Ironically, we don't think of alcohol and cigarettes as dangerous drugs because they're permitted by our powers that be. Yet we think of something like marijuana or mushrooms as a dangerous drug, both non-physically addictive. Um, and to be clear, I'm not suggesting that drugs are necessary, but we do consume a huge amount of drugs, and I'm going to include sugar in that. And through the art of dogma, it's been normalized for us. It's been normalized to poison ourselves and our children, sins of the father passed on and on. And the big sin that's passed on is ignorance. Ignorance. We're ignoring the obvious. We're ignoring it. These things came to my attention in bonding with a dog, realizing the dog eats dog food and water, drinks water. That's about it. We, on the other hand, if we were to feed our dog the drugs we take, the food we eat, we would kill that dog in short order. The alcohol. And we'd be considered abusive people to animals. Yet when we do it to humans, our children, and to ourselves, it's completely normal. So, what does that mean exactly? Well, I think what it means is that we have to be willing to admit that we were idiots. We have to be willing to admit that we've been ignoring the facts. We've been ignoring the truth that's been right in front of us. So, yeah. In looking back on some of these comments, I see the same scenario. I had a birth mother who doesn't want to be called a birth mother. She wants to be called a mother because she wasn't given a choice, she said. And I know that was the case. That your families threw you under the bus. They were brainwashed into thinking that you know their pride and their their reputation could be saved if they just lied and sent their daughter away to have the baby and nobody had to know. But they knew. The daughter knew. Anything spiritual knew. So who are you hiding this from? Exactly. Who are you hiding your shame from? Did you not think that we would find our way home? The Norse had a tradition of tossing their, supposedly, I wasn't there, but the Vikings supposedly had a tradition of tossing their babies in the water. And if it was a sink or swim situation. And that's just Gizmo. He's not really getting hurt. He's just very, gets startled easily. So adoption, the Vikings, that's pretty hardcore. You're going to end up with some hardy people with that sort of practice. The weak, if you're too weak to swim, you sink. That's hard. That's a hard ass. But what do we have? We have the opposing version of that, a weakening of our children. So I'll give you a very easy example that should be obvious for anyone to think about, is that mothers have been told to swaddle up their little children, wrap them up like a little bug, to simulate the womb, to calm them down. Well, that's nice, but at the same time, that's like putting the butterfly back into the cocoon. You're not allowing the child to flop around and gain strength. You're weakening the child. Is that not obvious? Right? Because why? We're not animals? Wow. I mean, that's pretty arrogant. We have physical animal avatars that we reside in, and with that goes muscle memory, traumatic memory, all kinds of things. So what is going on exactly? What is adoption? Well, psychologically speaking, adoption is no different than the Vikings throwing their babies back into the water. In 18 years, or 20, or 30, or 40, however long it takes us to gather up the courage to go and try again to connect with our roots and our family, with fear, subconscious fear maybe, that we'll be rejected yet again. And a lot of us are. So I guess what we have here is a situation that could create some very strong, psychologically strong individuals that have borne the responsibility that our parents gave up and have survived living in a place where a lot of us did not bond to our second families. That's hard. So when we go back, we make it to shore, we found our way home, we're kicked back into the water and held down. Yes, yes. Unfortunately, it's not quite right. So I've gotten a little bit off track here, and my mind is a little bit up in the air in this conundrum. Because how do you get people to see that they've been duped? How do you get people to see that by going along with the status quo and by going along with the lies and the pretend that they're simply propagating more pain and agony and contributing more and more to the separation of the family for our culture and cultures around the world for that matter, since adoption has become big business over here on our continent. But anyways, the point I guess I'm trying to get across is that you can get angry at me, not the majority of you, but the few that pop by with their angry responses that I haven't taken them personally into consideration. I do speak in generalizations for the most part. Um, you know, Anybody, including the adoption agencies, which they do, can bring out the ideal situation where the child's being burnt with cigarettes and whipped and beaten and starved, and the rest of their family is exactly the same, and they're in jail or criminals, and on and on and on it goes, and they cannot be with their family. Of course, of course. But the problem then becomes that the system takes the children, and the system itself wants control. And the way it wants control is not necessarily for the benefit of the child. So if it's a liberal government, oh well, maybe you're going to put the kids in Christian kids in a Muslim home, or in a LGBT community, or whatever it may be, you know. Or if you had a conservative government, well, you could take children and give them all to Zionist Christian homes, and you could give them all to non-smoking, non-drinking, whatevers. But the point being is that it's the family that's being harmed, right? If I remove this finger and give it to someone else that doesn't have a finger, well, that doesn't really do them much good, does it? You know? I'll give you another example. When you look at organ donors, when they donate their organs, well, is it not a fact that those organs have to match up to a certain degree with that other physiology? And even when it does, sometimes that physiology is going to reject the new organ. So what exactly makes people think that a social worker without any sort of scientific degree, without any sort of, well, I mean, I guess if you want to call sociology science, but without any sort of real degree, how are they going to match these people up? And what are they matching them up based upon exactly? How much money they're willing to give? How much their political agenda needs, more kids like these people? You know, I mean, when we look at the television, we see that psychopathy, sociopathy, narcissism are all promoted. Does it not stand to reason that the adoption industry, being part of that same system, wants to also promote narcissism? Well, let's give them to narcissists. Well, how would they know if they're narcissists? Yada, yada, yada. I might be a little bit paranoid, but keep in mind that I have good reason to be. And as far as I'm concerned, paranoia in this day and age is just reality on a finer scale. So that's what I have to say for today. I don't know how to get the ignorant to look at the facts. I can't convince my own adoptive family that there's research that needs to be done. I mean, might have been nice to pick up a book on adoptees or psychology when they, adopted me, but no. The government said, "Oh, we'll give you a baby," so they assume, well, we're qualified to be parents. And it's all the encouragement they needed. You know, I don't know. I go on and on and on. It's a complex topic, it's a complex situation, and I just hate seeing people that A, don't know how to mind their own business, B, somehow think the government is this altruistic, flawless creation. Anger, resentment. The one thing that woman did say is she hopes I get more counseling. Well, I'm working on that as well. And I saw my fourth psychiatrist today, or no, sorry, the other day on the 13th. And we talked and talked, and he had some good things to say, and he, asked some pertinent questions. So I thought maybe we were off to a good start. But then he said some things that tend to believe me he's got the same sort of backwards thinking, i.e., that, I have to get myself out of a victim mentality. Well, about 3 years ago was when I finally came to the ultimate realization that I had been a victim, that things were done to me that were completely not right. And that all these things were beyond my control. That was hard. It was hard to admit that I had been a victim my whole life. I kept getting back on that horse and getting knocked off over and over and over. And when I finally accepted the fact that I had been a victim, I went to victim services and tried to talk to them, which was a little bit helpful, but it brought up some emotions, and it brought up some memories that, although I recalled the incidents, with rose-colored glasses. And it wasn't until I was willing to take off the rose-colored glasses and look at those incidents for what they truly were, was I able to really start unraveling and understanding the exact nature and extent of the damages that had been done to me psychologically. I thank God that I'm able to work my way through this stuff on my own, because there has been no treatment plan laid out. There has been no um, offering of resources, etc., for me to get psychotherapy. As an adoptee, I find it pretty mind blowing that the institution is allowed to exist without some sort of contingency plan for the adoptee if they do not bond, if they are rejected, if they are abused in their new homes. And then to go out looking for that assistance and help, and have my feelings about the situation questioned, and to have my feelings invalidated, which I find to be inexcusable. Because the traumas surrounding adoption are not a bloody secret. Anyone with a computer, common sense, but a computer at least, is able to Google and find this information quite readily and easily now. Throughout my life, and as a child, a teenager, a young adult, I didn't have that ability. I had to search high and low. I had to go to doctors, emergency room, etc., looking for help and assistance to try to put things into a rationale in my psyche to be able to move forward. So, luckily, as an adoptee, like many of you, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. And if any adoptee is alive and breathing, they're getting stronger every day exponentially, because I know the pains that you have suffered. And sure, we can have good runs of distractions. We can have, long stretches. And yet, whenever the questions about ourselves, our adoption, our family, and the why come up, so does the pain. So, anyways, maybe I got 0.001% of what I wanted to talk about out, but there's a start. And I don't like lecturing, and I don't like, blah, blah, blah. This is my conversation with the larger world of adoption and adoptees. And I love hearing from you guys. I really do. And for all of you that have shared your pain on my little channel here, thank you so much. Not for me, but for us all. And the more of us, I believe, that stand up and yell and make videos and make the hard decision to be truthful and honest about our feelings to do with adoption, regardless of what it costs us, because it costs us dearly. This isn't easy to talk about. This has been my life. An imaginary pretend life that was created because money, because control, because shame, because drugs, because alcohol, because all the other controls. Anyways, I've expended what I can talk about, and I have a lot to think about. And hopefully this gives you a lot to think about. Thanks.